Good day everyone. In this video, we will see what is MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet, what is the use of MSDS, and how to read this MSDS. So for example, we have used an MSDS here, which is a simple MSDS of diesel oil. So we will see how to go through this MSDS, what points we need to see in this MSDS, and how to read it and how to refer to this MSDS. MSDS is Material Safety Data Sheet. Before we load any dangerous cargo on board the ship, this MSDS should be provided to the vessel before the cargo is loaded, so that the crew members, the officer in charge of the cargo operations can go through this material safety data sheet. All the chemical, physical properties of the of the particular cargo are given in this MSDS, and the emergency procedures related to this particular cargo are also mentioned here in the MSDS. Apart from that, the contact detail of the manufacturer or the supplier of this product is also given. Now we need this material safety data sheet because there can be an accident on board the ship. Anything can be there. For example, this cargo can leak, this cargo can come on the deck, the crew can come in contact with the cargo, or there can be a fire on board the ship. And then we need to understand the properties of this particular cargo, and these properties are there in this MSDS. Now the MSDS has to be provided before loading the cargo. This has to be explained to all the crew members, and then it is posted in a conspicuous location so all the crew members can read through it, can read it, and also a copy of it is kept at the gangway. So when you are in port and if there is any accident involving this cargo, the shore personnel who arrive on board the ship who help in this emergency, they are also aware of the properties of the particular cargo. The commencement of cargo loading should not take place till the time the MSDS is on board the ship. In fact, your ISGOT shipshore safety checklist also states the same thing, that the MSDS has to be provided before the commencement of loading operations. Normally, this MSDS is provided by the loading master who visits the vessel for carrying out a key meeting before loading the cargo. Sometimes it is also received by email before the vessel arrives in the port. Now, when the briefing prior to cargo operations is conducted by the cargo officer, all the crew members, the contents of this MSDS has to be discussed with. Now, for example, if there is a small accident, like something, this particular cargo comes into skin contact of a person or somebody, it splashes on the skin or it splashes on the eye, it goes into the mouth of a crew member, then what is the first aid is to be taken. Now we have to understand this, that we should read this MSDS in advance. It should be not like that if something has fallen on somebody's skin and then we are running here and there and reading the MSDS that what is to be done now. So all crew members should read this MSDS before loading the cargo. So we know exactly what are the properties of the cargo and what is to be done in case of an emergency. So let's go through this simple MSDS here. So this is just used for reference for your particular ship. When you're loading a particular cargo, when you're loading that cargo, you will get MSDS and you should know how to refer to this MSDS. So first is given the identity of the material, that what is this particular cargo what you're loading. So the product name is given. For example, this particular cargo is diesel oil or high sulfur diesel, also as per Bharat 4 standards, high sulfur diesel as per Bharat 3 standards, high flash high sulfur diesel, or export high sulfur diesel. These are the various names of this particular cargo. Chemical designation of this cargo is a complex mixture of hydrocarbons. Trade name, by what name this cargo is being transported. Again, high sulfur diesel Bharat 4, high sulfur diesel Bharat 3, high flash high sulfur diesel, and export high sulfur diesel. Synonym of this cargo names are high sulfur diesel or gas oil. Now gas oil is also called as diesel oil. Formula for this is a complex mixture of hydrocarbons. and label is category UN class 3. UN number is 1202 and regular identification is UN number 1202. Shipping name or IMDG code is class B, which is a flammable liquid, and hazardous chemical code is 3Z. So this is basically giving the identification of this particular cargo. So we get this, all the names. We can get this cargo by various names, which are mentioned here. The next is physical and chemical properties of this cargo. That it gives the physical state, that it will be in liquid state, boiling point of this particular cargo, vapor pressure of this cargo, appearance of this cargo, that it is light brown oily liquid, melting and freezing point if relevant, evaporation rate, odor of this cargo, that it gives pungent smell, vapor density of the cargo, it says that it is heavier than air. So by this you come to know that the vapors are going to settle down on the deck because it is heavier than air. So there can be pocket of cargo vapors concentrated on the deck. So you have to be careful about it. Solubility in water, it says it is insoluble in water. Other properties of this cargo says that it is a flammable cargo. Specific gravity is 0.81 to 0.91 at 20 degrees Celsius. That means it is lighter than water. It is going to float on the surface of the water. And pH value is, it is neutral. It is not acidic. So these are the physical and chemical properties. For example, if it was sulfuric acid, it will give you acidic. Now this cargo is not acidic, but it is flammable. That means it can catch fire. So these are the physical and chemical properties of this particular cargo. Next is fire and explosion hazards data. That explosion flammability, it says it is flammable. Flash point is 32 degrees Celsius to 96 degrees Celsius. So if the temperature is 32 degrees Celsius to 96 degrees Celsius, it can catch fire. Flammability range, please watch the previous video on flammability diagram and how to use that flammability range diagram. You'll understand how do we use this flammability range. It says lower explosive limit is 0.7% and higher explosive limit is 5%. And auto ignition temperature is 256.6 degrees Celsius. That means if the temperature of this particular cargo rises to this temperature, it is automatically going to catch fire. You don't need to provide an external source of heat to this cargo. Above this temperature, it is automatically going to catch fire. Reactive hazards, that its impact is that it is stable. That means it is not reactive. Hazardous combustion products, that means if that cargo is burned, you're going to get carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. Both these gases are very dangerous to humans, in fact all the organisms. Okay, asphyxiation can happen because of carbon monoxide. Now here we have to understand the properties of these particular gases. For example, if you look at carbon monoxide, it is an odorless, colorless gas. It combines or it reacts with the hemoglobin in the blood. The purpose of hemoglobin in the blood is basically to transfer oxygen to the various parts of the body. But if carbon monoxide reacts with the hemoglobin, then it will not be able to transfer this oxygen because hemoglobin is reacting with the carbon monoxide and it is carrying carbon monoxide to the various parts of the body. It will no more carry oxygen to the various parts of the body and we won't be able to breathe, and that's called as asphyxiation or suffocation. Static discharge, it says there's no static discharge. Hazardous decomposition products, it says no. Reactivity, it says it reacts with oxidizing materials. Conditions to avoid when we are dealing with this cargo, it says avoid contact with oxidizing materials. Hazardous polymerization says may not occur, and any conditions to avoid, it says no. Then the health hazards. So this section we have to look at very carefully so that we know this in advance. Routes of entry of this cargo can be inhalation via breathing, that we can breathe in the vapors. It can come in contact with the skin contact, mucous membranes, and eye contact. So it can get spilled and fall into the eyes, and ingestion can go into the digestive tract. Effect of exposure and symptoms, that it causes dizziness, vomiting, irritation to eyes and skin. So these are the hazardous properties of this particular cargo. And if the threshold limit value of this cargo is 5 ppm, that you can get exposed to this cargo for a normal working period of 8 hours in a day, if the percentage of this cargo is less than 5 ppm or 5 ppm. Here is the most important thing, that is the emergency treatment for this cargo. If you get any of these happening, that is inhalation, skin, mucous membrane, eye contact, and ingestion, if this happens, you have to do this. Emergency treatment says you have to remove the victim to fresh air. If the person is not able to breathe, you have to give artificial respiration if required. So this is the first aid you have to give in this reference to this particular cargo. Hazardous specifications, that the health hazards is 2 as per NFPA hazard signal. Flammability is 3, stability is no problem 0, and special hazards are 0. Any other known hazards, that it says it is a combustible liquid? Yes. Water reactive? No. Irritant? Yes, it is. Flammable material? Yes, it is. Oxidizer? No. Sensitizer? No. Pyrophoric material? No. Organic peroxides? No. Carcinogen, that is a substance which can cause cancer. It says no. Explosive material says no. Corrosive material says no. Mutagen? No. Unstable material says no. Compressed gas? Say no. Others also no, or not applicable. So basically the hazards are that it is a combustible liquid, it is an irritant, and it is a flammable material. So we have to take care of this particular cargo that it doesn't catch fire. We should refer to the fire triangle, and we should see that this is fuel. So fuel is there. So other two sides of the fire triangle are basically heat and air. We should cut off heat and air so that the fire triangle does not get completed. Safe usage data, that ventilation, you have to carry out mechanical ventilation. You cannot depend on natural ventilation if required. Mechanical ventilation means you have to carry out the ventilation with the help of exhaust fans, which may be pneumatic or hydro driven, which can be water driven. Personal protective equipment required for handling this cargo is: for eyes, you need safety goggles. For respiratory system, you need self-contained breathing apparatus set. Gloves, which should be chemical resistant. Clothing, you need to have boiler suits to cover your entire body. Others, not applicable. Precautions: for handling and storage, you need to store it at a cool, ventilated, and specified place. So if you're carrying it in containers, you have to carry it you have to store it at a cool, ventilated, and a specified place only. Emergency response data, that fire extinguishing media for this particular cargo is carbon dioxide, CO2, or you can use dry chemical powder, DCP, or aqueous film forming foam, or water spray to cool the container. So this is a flammable liquid which is class B fire. So basically the most effective is aqueous film forming foam, but you may also use dry chemical powder or carbon dioxide depending upon the amount of liquid you have. If it is large liquid, you need to have AFFF or foam. If it is in small quantities, for example, a small container has caught fire, you can use CO2 or DCP also. Special procedures for fighting fire, you have to use self-containing breathing apparatus, SCBA set, for firefighting. Exposure, skin and eye contact, inhalation and ingestion. You have to remove the victim to fresh air, give artificial respiration if required, if the person is choking and is not able to breathe. If spills happen, then the steps to be taken are: you have to collect in a container and spray the absorbing material like clay or sand. Okay, if it is in small amount, definitely. Waste disposal method of this particular cargo is that on a large scale, you have to absorb and landfill, and you have to allow for atmospheric evaporation over a period of time. It is going to evaporate. Additional information, do's and don'ts for this particular cargo is that in case of the leaks, you have to monitor the percent LEL. You should restrict ignition sources, and you should stop traffic vehicular movements if you're carrying it in a truck. If you're carrying it on the ship, then you don't have to stop this traffic or vehicular movements. You should dilute vapor cloud with water spray. You should look for wind direction. should evacuate personal community on the downside of the wind. That means away from this vapors of this particular cargo, so that the vapors are not flowing on to the personnel. You should approach from upwind direction. That means you have to take the wind on your back, not on your face. If caught on downwind, move perpendicular to the wind direction and assemble at the nearest assembly point. You should cordon off the area where the spill has taken place. You should use self-containing breathing apparatus set in case of a fire. You should contain leaking liquid. Okay, so if it is leaking from the pipelines on the ship, basically you should put your SOPEP in use. Do not panic. Do not enter without knowing the wind direction. Do not approach leaking affected area without proper respiratory protection. Do not approach from downwind direction. Do not run. Do not move along or opposite to the direction of the wind, and do not allow any unauthorized personnel in the area. So this is the additional information related to this particular cargo. Sources used for this particular MSDS is given here, and then the manufacturer supply data is given here, that what is the firm's name which is supplying this or manufacturing this, what is the mailing address of this firm, what is the telephone, telex number, contact details of this particular cargo firm. Standard parking is given here, and the emergency telephone during transit is given here. So it is a very simple MSDS which we have put into use to understand how the MSDS is to be read. Sometimes the MSDS which is provided to us on board the ships is a little bit complicated and is slightly difficult to understand, but then we should mark the important points there, that what it is, what points are of concern to us and what is to be read. Okay, for example, if a spill has happened, you can contact on the emergency contact number which is given in the MSDS. If somebody has ingested or somebody has inhaled this, you can contact that particular emergency number. Now, if a person has suffered from inhalation or ingestion of this particular MSDS, you should also give this MSDS to the doctor who is carrying out the treatment. For example, if you're taking radiomedical advice, you should send a copy of this MSDS to the doctor by email or whatever available means. Or if you're sending a person to the doctor, you should also send this MSDS to the person. Now, it is also recommended that a copy of this MSDS should also be kept along with the fire plan, normally at the gangway. So whenever the shore firefighting team or the shore teams arrives on board the ship to help the crew members to tackle the emergency, they also have the information related to the cargo. Normally, we also keep a copy of the storage plan, so they know what cargo is kept in which tank, and the MSDS is there, so they can understand the properties of this particular cargo. Gentlemen, it is a very good practice to read this MSDS before the cargo operations commence. Definitely your cargo officer is going to do that, and he's also going to discuss this MSDS with all the other crew members. But even if it is not discussed by him, it becomes our responsibility to go through this MSDS. Now, it is only not related with the cargo which we are loading on the ship, but any kind of chemicals which are dangerous on board the ship. For example, the chemicals which we keep in the locker, chemical locker, for them also we should receive this MSDS, and we should read this MSDS before handling that particular chemical. For paints and for thinners also, we get this MSDS. They're normally kept in the paint locker. Wherever this particular dangerous goods is kept, the MSDS is posted outside. But because of laziness or because of negligence, we don't read this MSDS. We just go, we wear some gloves, and we start working with that particular goods, whatever it is, dangerous good. Now, understand this very carefully, that please go through this MSDS before handling whatever small quantity of chemical you are handling. Wear the appropriate PPE. Even if you have to spend or use some of your valuable time to read this MSDS, please do it. It is better to keep yourself and your other crew members safe rather than being sorry at a later stage. Now, thank you for watching this video. I hope it will be useful to you. And if you find this video useful, also please share it with your friends, your groups, or your colleagues so that they can also watch this. And also please don't forget to subscribe this channel. Thank you. Thank you for watching this. Good luck.